Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the European Challenger Series qualifiers, and we're going to be into our Game 5 now on the day of the first day out of the group stage. We do have 5 days of groups, but as we get ready to get into Game 5, let's check out those starting rosters. You know the drill. In the blue corner, it is going to be Team Forge or 4G, Mimic in the top lane, Taiki in the jungle, Zaizuka in the mid lane, with Gap in AD carry, and Denden in support. So I'm going to have a lot of fun pronouncing that mid laner's name.
And lining up on the other side, it's EURONICS Gaming. Phones is going to be up in the top lane. Obvious is going to be in the jungle. Magi Felix is going to be in the middle lane, as well as Cedrion and Hado down in the bottom lane.
Yeah, a lot of faces that we've seen before, also a lot that we haven't seen. We don't really know a lot about Team Forge. We know they were number 1 seed. We know they did very well getting here on their road to coming here right now. But EURONICS are the team I want to talk about because they have some real strong individual talent and a lot of players that we personally have seen a lot of in the UK scene.
So Hadao is a guy that I have cast for a very long time throughout my career in the amateur scene. This guy has been on a lot of top talent teams in the UK. Choke was when he was having his really high prime performance, where he was pretty much dominating with the rest of his team and having a phenomenal run through a bunch of different tournaments in the UK. And now, recently he played for Manolite. He had some really impressive performances there, but still fell short of managing to beat out Misfits in the final of the ESL UK Premiership. So now he has joined EURONICS, and hopefully this could be his opportunity to move into what could be a fantastic future for him.
Yeah, there's also other players as well that I want to take a look at. Taiki on Team Forge. He's been around the Challenger scene for such a long time, up against Obvious, who has been a player who honestly has shown up in recent days. Like we saw him, of course, on Team Dig EU when he qualified for the LCS, now Splice. But it'd just be interesting to see how the junglers interact.
It certainly will be. We saw a lot of jungle interaction last game. We talked about how LeChase, how well he was going to do up against his counterpart. And to be honest, we were really impressed with what they were able to do with that Kindred in the early game. He had a lot of pressure. He set up his lanes for success. And are we going to see that same sort of battle today? Will Obvious be able to show the same stuff that he's had in the past with Dig EU?
I feel like he's got like the more recent track record because we've seen him do really well in the jungle against really good teams, whereas Taiki, he's kind of like an old soul in the Challenger scene where we've seen him. Yeah, I mean, he's done really well in like previous teams he's been in, but never really found extreme success in the same way that maybe Obvious hasn't quite gotten to the LCS, but he's very close, right? Like he basically made it to the door, whereas Taiki so many times has been in teams where he hasn't really hit that point. So we'll see if maybe he and the rest of Team Forge can make that happen for them. But we just have to see because Team Forge is one of the teams in this tournament who are maybe more unknown than pretty much anyone else in terms of their players, in terms of how they're going to turn up when we come into the qualifiers. So we just have to see as we get into Champions Select. So we're just waiting for those bans to come on through. But talking about some of the new things we've seen in the tournament so far, we've seen, of course, the Vladimir come out, a lot of prioritization on the Dragons.
Wasn't a fan of the Vladimir, personally.
I wasn't either.
You and I were sitting in the back room talking about it, being like,
Was that because we don't like Vladimir or because we didn't like how that was played? I think it's because I'm not sure about Vladimir's new kit and how it interacts.
We're not a massive fan of Vladimir at the moment. The fact that you have to play around those charges is kind of like playing around the Gnar Rage Bar, and it's just not a fun mechanic that you really want from your mid lane. You just kind of want that burst damage, you want that teamfight presence. But will the Vladimir be prioritized in this game? I don't know. Maybe.
It was fun to see, at least.
It was fun to see. I really want to see Brand because he is super fun in team fights. His passive is so cool, and it can do an amazing amount of damage in like full-on 5v5. So
he really does hit like a truck. But we do have some bans coming out here, videos we should probably talk about. Echo actually made it all the way through, I think, the last Champions Select.
Yes, he did.
We didn't actually see him banned.
We talked about it in the last game. We were surprised that it wasn't. But this game, Team Forge are like, nah. None of that. None of that.
Get out of here. Yeah,
nope,
but they
we
do also ban
Echo.
the Kindred, which we did see last game. Zia, we've seen earlier today, and also MSI, of course, very strong champion. And Nidalee and Rise out from EURONICS.
Yeah, this is not too much of a surprise. We had a discussion earlier on about what really is going to change moving on to 6.9, 6.10, and while there were a bunch of cool new stuff coming in, the old stuff wasn't really hurt.
Yeah.
And so why play with something new when the old stuff did its job perfectly fine? So they're still sticking to things like the Kindred, like the Nidalee. Graves likely to be a priority moving forward. We did see a really great Gragas come out earlier in the game between Fnatic Academy and Low Priority, so we could potentially see Gragas come out once again, but Trundle is actually the priority priority right now. So something we have been seeing rise to popularity here in the Challenger Series so far. Definitely has a lot of presence, and I think back to Alfari and his basically ability to ignore everyone with that Subjugate, with the Titanic Hydra, going into that full tank mode. He has definitely that massive split push threat up in the top lane.
Interesting to see the priority on that one. Of course, it is a flex pick. Could also see it in that support role as well. And now that the Herald is such a useful tool, putting that on the Trundle makes him just unkillable, does a billion damage, and then you can't do anything 1v1 anyway. Looking towards EURONICS' first couple picks and see what they bring out here. Thinking about their jungle perhaps, but really can't take anything away from that. What are we looking from a first rotation? What would you pick in this situation?
Lucian is available right now. I would put a little bit of pressure on top of him. He's a very strong AD carry right now. Didn't actually have that high of a win rate in the MSI, as far as I can recall. And even though he is a popular pick, very strong, has a lot of presence down in the bottom lane. The interesting thing about Lucian that we've seen on this patch is the Ghost Blade into Black Cleaver, building him more like a spellcaster with heavy penetration rather than the typical AD carry build that we've seen. And it has had some interesting success from a number of people that I saw Tabs tweeting about it the other week, saying how he really liked that style of itemization on, I think he was actually building it on Ashe. But that sort of combo is something that we're seeing a little bit more on these AD caster styles of play.
For sure. But we don't see the Lucian just yet, but we may in a second. So Gragas, or rather Graves, has been picked up over for EURONICS, and the Alistar as well for the bot lane going into that support role. So Haddow going to be comfortable with that champion. So pretty solid picks to start off the draft.
Haddow, his three main go-to champions were Braum, Alistar, and Bard. These were the three that he would pick if they were open and available to him. And so with the Braum gone, not really a surprise that he's moved immediately back to the Alistar. Have to remember 6'10", Alistar did have a couple reductions to the amount of damage that he does now mitigate within his ultimate. It's gone from 70% to 50% at level 1, then 60% at level 2, and then back to the 70% at level 3. So a little bit squishier when he pops that ult compared to what he was in the past.
Yeah, he can't just like drop to like 10% HP and be like, I'm just unkillable now and go for a tower dive anyway. And it's like, okay. So yeah, not going to see that in this game. But there's a Lucian, so we were just talking about that champion and all the reasons why he's good right now. But also the Elise didn't really drop out of the meta, really. And with the Nidalee ban and a Kindred ban and a Grace pickup, then Elise.
I think, yeah, Elise makes the most sense here. She's kind of like the next best thing. The Gragas, again, we did mention it earlier. Another viable option, but it does seem that Team Forge, they want a little bit more early game presence with the Elise. They want to be able to say, look, we can make these early picks. We have that potential pressure from our early game jungler, and it can somewhat match the Graves if you catch him unawares. So, do quite like this pickup from Team Forge. So far, pretty standard stuff coming out from him, just making sure that they have comfortable laners. They have the strong presence from Elise, they have the strong presence from Lucian, and Trundle pretty well-rounded top laner.
So EURONICS do lock in the next couple of picks. Definitely been spending a fair amount of time on each of these rotations. Victor back into the mid lane, as we've already seen throughout this tournament as well in this new patch. 6'10", if you have just joined us. And Ezreal as well for that bottom lane, and that'll be going over to Cedrian. So we'll see how that one works out.
Also seeing a rise in popularity of the Ezreal throughout this tournament so far. The safe AD carry that has that nice spike come the mid game so far has been, it didn't work out phenomenally for our last matchup with Chev. Definitely had some nice presence. He just did have a good kill score, and with paired up with the Nami, it was quite nice. But paired up with the Alistar, you're likely going to struggle in lane depending on what Team Forge decide to go for. They could go for the Caitlyn, and maybe with the Janna again. EURONICS will not have the same sort of laning phase that Chev were able to have in the game before. But we'll have to see moving forward. This Victor has had a couple changes. The delay on his E is a little bit longer now, but his ult. So the cool thing about Victor now is I feel that he's got two build paths. You've got the Rylai's or you've got the Lichbane. And I was talking to Stress about it in the office, and he was like, if you go for the Lichbane sort of build, you're going more DPS, and it's kind of like, aren't there better alternatives? But it is still an option, and I've seen a couple pros build it. Like I saw High, he was going for that type of, it's more like a solo carry sort of build, but then you can go for the Abyssal Rylai's route, where you're putting all the damage in your ultimate. You're like, I want this to be a big team fight sort of, rather than a dually sort of skirmishy style of Victor.
Oh, just have to see what he builds in this game and what the composition really needs as well. But we do have the next two pickups, Morgana and Bard. So you gotta assume the Bard goes in the support role, which means that Morgana will go into the mid up against Victor most likely.
Wow, okay. So Morgana, I was not expecting the Morgana. As far as I can recall, there were no changes to Morgana in the patch. Nothing significant has happened to her, which to me says that something in the items has piqued Forge's interest. They've said, okay, this new item in the game, and we have had quite a few changes, is actually really good on Morgana right now, so let's look to try and pick that one up. Maybe the Athenes, you have to remember that Athenes has had a couple of changes to it, so that it's more of a supporty mid laner item rather than the heavy sort of, or this heavy sort of mana regen that it used to be. But based on the composition, they do have a pretty good pick composition coming out from Forge. You have the Bard with the Cosmic Binding, you have the Dark Binding from Morgana, you have the Cocoon coming out from Elise, so definitely a lot of pick presence coming out from Forge.
A lot of bindings on that team. And the last pickup, wait, that was a Swain pickup, actually. I wasn't even... I was looking at that. I was looking at Morgana, I was like, that's weird. And then like they were just like, a Swain managed to get all the way through.
I didn't even recognize the icon. It's been so long since I've seen it.
Wow, okay. Going into the top lane as well, no less. Not even into that mid lane. So that's against Trundle. And we're just talking about like Trundle, he's going to be looking for that 1v1. I don't even know what Swain wants to do anymore.
So did you see the Reddit video this morning of Swain 6-10? And I was talking to Stress and I was like, so do you think we'll see Swain? And he was like, maybe.
Perhaps.
And I was like, what lane do you think it will be in? He was like, I don't know. It's tough to say. And I agreed with him. Like, it is tough to say. Where do you really put that Swain? And against the Trundle that likes to steal your stats, well, Swain's not really going to build that defensively. He's just going to build
health.
Yeah, he's going to build a lot of health. And wow, this is going to be a cool matchup. Really excited. Could we potentially see the first lane swap of the day here?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's just like, what does Swain do anymore? Because he's had a lot of changes to his kit where his like power's gone. In terms of what even Decrepify does, it doesn't even just summon a laser bird on top of him anymore. It goes into like into a zone. So yeah, definitely a different play style. He's gone for the Deathfire Touch Mastery.
I like it. I do like it. The Deathfire Touch. I think it scales quite nicely with the Q. I forget the name of it, but it amplifies your damage. So now it's a flat. The Torment gives you flat 20% damage increase, as opposed to the scaling before. So just like in the patch notes, they give a public service announcement: don't max that ability. It's not what you want to do. Max the bird killing stuff. Yep. That is the ability that you want to max.
Max the bird.
Yeah, max the bird. Because he's all about the birds, and especially now that he goes into his ult, that's the big change on 610. It's no longer a percentage of his damage done; it's a flat health that he now gets back. So having that means that he has way more sustain in these fights, and the more birds that he gets off, the more health that he has.
There you go. Syndra, it's all about the boars. With Swain, all about the birds. There we go. We're learning on EUCS broadcast here, but we're going to be getting into this fifth game with 4G. It will be Team Forge up against EURONICS SEG as we get into this game. Going to see a temporary line of scrimmage. We may break that open very shortly. Mimic is going to be going into this top lane here. Obvious. He's going to be looking for a spider, but Taiki's waiting for him. And Magi Felix in the mid lane as well.
So again, we're seeing a style of teamfight composition coming out from ESG. There seems to be a red side thing where you have the teamfight compositions coming out. You do have better positioning for the setting up for the dragon, given that you have that easier access. And that could be what they're looking to fight around, whereas 4G much more towards that pick style of composition, playing around this Lucian, trying to make sure that he can be that massive carry. Really interested to see how Jizuki plays this Morgana in these mid-game team fights, because Morgana is not a champion that I've seen in a while. I think MSI? When LeBlanc, FLICKR up against EDG, when they picked the LeBlanc into the Morgana.
Last MSI.
Yeah, the last MSI. Yeah. So I think that was the last time that I saw it in competitive play. Morgana, quite a unique, really obnoxious to play against in lane. You take 3 points in the Tormented Soil, you drop it, the backline dies, and it's constantly shoving into your face. Against the Victor, that's not going to be too much of a problem. He has plenty of wave clear available to himself. He has that Death Ray as well. So it's going to just be wave clear up in the mid lane, as we are actually seeing the lane swap come out from 4G. They want to avoid that Trundle matchup going up against the Swain.
Well, you did call it, and now Den, he's putting poke damage down onto Obvious and Phones. You can even see the damage from the Thunder Lords as well. Hadar, he's going to try and do the opposite. He steals 1 million, 9 gold in the bank. Just a bit of annoyance, but that will take some of the experience away from that double jungle coming out here. Magi Felix in the mid lane, and as I just said, basically a farm lane. I've seen it a couple times in the European LCS, and last bit I believe Ica brought it in. And it was just like, well, he's getting a Tormented Soul the wave. and then he's going to do that about 8 more times, and that's just the laning phase.
Yeah, that is just the
Probably
laning
more
phase.
than 8 more times, more like 80.
But look, you can already see it happening now. The Victor struggling to deal with that. Decided to go for the cleanse due to the massive pick potential that 4G do have available to them. So let's talk about this lane swap just a little bit, because on this patch, experience has changed in the jungle. So duo jungling now is not as efficient as it used to be. You get the jungler gets way more experience than your partner does. So what 4G have decided to do is just immediately send all 3 members up into the lane. They want to get Mimic on as much experience as possible. Phones they decided to keep in the duo jungle for a little bit longer, so this could hurt the tempo of ESG with taking this turret down in the bottom lane. As you can see, 4G, Mimic's still level 1, but both top laners are going to be at the same sort of deficit. Both are going to be lacking that experience. Both are going to be falling behind, but 4G want this. They want to make sure that this Swain is far behind as possible.
Yeah, regardless of whatever happens to Swain, you reach a late game Swain, you just don't want to play against that. Den, he's going to get beaten up by the tower, but I want to see where the gold goes as well. I'd like to see the top laners maybe collect a lot of this gold. Hadou's going to be going back to base, so most likely that will be the case. But I want to see the Swain get big. That's really what I want to see in this game.
You want to see a big bird?
I do, and I want to see him just like wreck everything. I know Deficio is going to be very happy about this. He's a big Swain player himself. I'm not sure about the new Swain, but old Swain, love that champion.
Is he
second wave? That's going to hurt a little bit.
Is he a bird connoisseur? Would you call him that?
Maybe. I think it's just Swain though. I think Swain only flies out.
So he's
crows.
not a Nivea man?
Right, you know, because like if Swain shot out like lots of different birds, you know, and then you became like a bird
like
spotter,
a pigeon and a sparrow,
then you would be like a bird connoisseur. But because it's crows, I wouldn't call Deficio that.
Oh,
that sucks a lot.
So this comes back to what happened early on, where Phones decided to stay a little bit longer in the jungle with Obvious, and because Mimic was sent straight to the top lane almost immediately, they had that tempo advantage. They got that tier 1 turret down, and it actually bought enough time for 4G to rotate back down to the bottom lane, and they're going to keep their turret alive. So 4G with the massive advantage in the early game.
Just for reference, that tower's on 9 HP. So yes, 4G managed to keep it alive, but in this situation, you have to move players around the map. You have to send the Swain top lane, you have to send the duo lane. There's going to be a large time in this game where they won't be able to reach that tower to hit it. So even if it is on 9 HP, it could be 1 HP. It doesn't matter because they can't hit it and get the gold.
And now you're in the 2 versus 2, which you really wanted to avoid with the Ezreal and the Alistar as well, because this is a rough matchup against the Bard and the Lucian. So much lane presence from that duo pair. This is really smart from 4G as well. Mimic realizes the wave is shoved in the top. He can't overextend. He can't afford to do that against the Swain with the amount of pick potential and crowd control that the Swain does have. So they're just going to rotate all their members down to the bottom half of the map, and they're going to start setting up a siege onto this tier 1 turret as well. They may even go for the dive.
Risky, because Graves is there. Preemptive teleport actually coming out from Phones. He's going to cancel it. That was a little bit weird, because it was 4 versus 3, now it's going to be 5 versus 3, and now they'll go for the engage. Sejuan's going to come in, Hadou with the knock-up onto 4. Not a lot of follow-up here, going to be landing the turret shots onto Mimic, but I think ESG have gotten away with this 5-man dive. Cosmic, or rather the E comes out coming in from Bard, allowing everyone to escape, but that did not go as planned for 4G.
So number 1, you're diving in Alistar. Always risky. He has a lot of crowd control. Very easy for him to set up the disengage. Number 2, you're diving against the Alistar with an exhaust, which you didn't even have to use. But the third big thing about setting up a tower dive on 6-10 is in 6-9, the amount of damage that turrets do has been increased. It now does 40% of your maximum health for the first 3 shots, and then it starts to amplify after that. So setting up for tower dives is so much riskier. It really does hurt if you do not pull it off properly, and 4G failing a little bit on their execution.
Yeah, Obvious now going to be walking on up. So they had that advantage from that initial tower going down. Of course, Phones didn't manage to pick up that extra experience or gold. But now, Forge, from that play, actually fell further behind. Because Mimic is level 3 up against the level 5 Phones right now. So there's a big advantage in terms of those levels, and of course the farm as well, since Phones has just been farming. That's all he's been doing. He's been playing Farmville in the top lane. And now EURONICS have 4 people in the top lane and may look to dive Mimic. So he could be in a horrible position.
So ESG trying to mimic what 4G did down in the bottom lane to maybe set up a play for themselves, as they are looking to set up a lot of damage down onto this tier 1 turret in the top lane. Taiki has moved up to to try and help mitigate this. But they are going to be forced back, and that is going to really hurt Mimic. As you mentioned, level 3, 11 farm to the 32 is going to allow Swain, who's now level 6.
That stings.
Yes, we thought it was really bad what happened to ESG, but they're able to turn it around with a really nice play. Mimic did not respect the big wave. Being on a trundle, it's hard for you to clear out the wave, especially up against a Swain. And so ESG playing the map beautifully to get themselves a tower back.
It was the counter play, and now the bottom lane is going to be sieged in from Gap and Denden, but this is going to take a while to go down. They're not going to get it on this wave at least, and the tempo is still over to EURONICS, taking the portal out. Phone, Sechin, Obvious, and Hadal still pushing up the top lane. In comes Morgana from the mid lane, and the rest of the team coming in here, trying to get something done. Black Shield comes across, so it doesn't get the Never move, but Tower also fall to Gaps, who's getting all of that gold. And the push continues in the top lane. If EURONICS can pick up this tower, this could be really good for them. End of the line onto Taiki. He's being zoned away. I'm not really sure why 4G are just sending people one by one as sacrifices to EURONICS, but they're going to eventually push them away. They do lose their blue before it, though.
Wow, so ESG not quite able to take down that tier 2 turret, but demonstrating how 4G are starting to struggle in this matchup. That there is somewhat of a lack of wave clear. While Morgana is obnoxious in lane, her ability to actually clear the waves is not that strong in a very short space of time. So ESG using that to their advantage, realizing that Victor's putting a lot of pressure in the mid. Morgana has to divide her attention, and this has finally enabled Magiflex to get himself back into the game in terms of farm. He has now managed to accrue a bit of an advantage. He's picked up that first Hex Core, which likely will go into the death ray, so he will amplify his ability to wave clear, and now he can be the one to start putting a bit more pressure down onto Chizuki. So ESG right now just basically playing the pressure game across the map.
Denden and Gap are just going to clear out some of these wards, try and get some vision. The Rift Herald has gone over to EURONICS, so they know that 4G are currently on the Herald, and there's a lot of prioritization on that buff now, and that will help out Mimic a lot if he can get in range, which he's trying to go over there to pick it up, because if he can get that, help him a lot in that solo lane, as he'll inevitably be stuck against something like a Swain. That's going to be collateral damage over the wall. I mean, stealing it doesn't really help. I mean, actually, it probably would have been good, because, yeah, 4G can't then pick up the buff, and, yeah, they would have at least denied it, but collateral damage was about 800 health off, so that was quite a long way away.
Yep, so that is going to be pretty big for Trundle right now. Maybe he will, with that buff, have a little bit of an easier time up against the Swain. For those that don't know, this is the Glimpse of the Void buff. Does give you 5% damage reduction, as well as that, it builds up stacks. You can see just above the Trundle right there, he's going to hit 100 stacks, and once he hits that 100 stacks, he then gets a bit of bonus damage off the back of that too. So fantastic for those split pushes, fantastic for setting up against the 1v1s, and when your opponent is a Swain, you need all the help you can get.
Yeah, for sure. Especially a Swain who's been farming by himself for a large portion of this game. Looking towards the Rod of Ages most likely. There you can see the new bird, the Crapify, coming out from Phones.
It now executes minions that are below 10 health.
It is.
So it's
very good.
Very convenient.
Good at last hitting. Before it was just like, I might get this minion, I might not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that can be quite annoying sometimes. So nice little quality of life change, I would argue, coming in for Swain, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he progresses. I really want to keep an eye on his itemization as well, because he is going for the Catalyst of the Eons, change from Catalyst of the Protector. Now what Catalyst of the Eons does is I like to think of it as the trading mana item. So every time you take damage, you get 15% of that damage back as mana, and every time you expend mana, you get 20% back of that as health. So fantastic for Swain, who both spends mana and also takes a lot of damage because he likes to be on your front. Yep, so likely to go for that Rod of Ages, but you do also have the GLP, or as I like to remember it, the Get Lucky Punk 800, and that is more of like an immediate, I like to think of it as a mid-game rower, because it gives you immediate stats, it gives you the things that you need right then and there, whereas the rower, it's still quite cheap, it's really cost effective, but it takes a little while to ramp up, so you're not going to have that same sort of power until slightly later on into the game.
The Get Lucky Punk, I like it. And Taiki going to be following after onto Hadar, doesn't quite find him just yet. But going wandering around, taking away this Scuttler while he can try and secure that vision. There's a very deep pink ward actually from ESG. That's one of the really nice pink wards to get in the enemy jungle where no one really checks it because everyone paths around it. So if you can get that early, honestly no one really spots it and it gives you a lot of information. So nice to have that vision down.
So ESG right now, they're just keeping phones up in the top lane once again. He's set up the freeze. He has his level 8, 73 CS to the 49. So 4G, I was just thinking to myself, they need to do something right now. They can't just allow this Swain to free farm up in the top lane. It's really not good for your team. You're allowing him to ramp up and reach a point where he's going to become uncontrollable. So they're going to make the play for the Dragon, which I think is smart. Pick up that neutral objective, and it's just going to help mitigate that rough early game that they're having so far.
For sure. Dragon goes over to Team Forge, and Obvious will now head on over. So I believe that was the Cloud Drake, not the Crab Drake. That would be something else. 15 movement speed out of combat. So if it was in combat, maybe a little bit better, but the prioritization goes down a little bit compared to, say, an Infernal Drake. But still, a strong buff.
They gotta go fast, man. They gotta go fast. Trundle needs it so that he can run away from the Swain. So he's just gonna be like, oh, I see the Swain, I'm out.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't get hit by Swain.
Yeah, if he gets hit by the Swain, then he's gonna lose it. But he also, stacked on top of that, does have that Glimpse of the Void buff. But even with that, he's just like, no, I refuse to go in this 1v1 lane. Guys, just stop putting me anywhere near him. So he's gonna now set up his own freeze. Could this be an opportunity for ESG or 4G? They're just gonna look for a shove.
Pushing out this mid lane, but decent wave clear over from EURONICS as well, so a little difficult to make that happen. Banana comes in, and we'll clear that one away. True Shot Barrage in from Sejin out of the bot lane, who's still farming up a Storm. Actually, a little bit far behind Gap, who has a slight CS advantage on him. Slight CS advantage in the mid lane to MagiFelix, and in the top lane, of course, we know Phones is basically banned himself, but he can be forgiven, that being Mimic, that he was on the receiving end of the lane swap where he didn't really get anything. That was Blue having to be smited away from Taiki. That was very light. I saw it go down to like 19 HP just in case a bird took it from the phone. It was like, well,
I was like, is the bird going to steal this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, I'm smiting it. My smite does like 800 damage. No.
That trumps it. And it's instant as well, so no travel time. Unfortunately, they are on birds. Birds do not teleport, unfortunately. Not yet, anyway.
And Nivea, if she took teleport, could teleport.
That's true. And you can do that in egg form as well. I still want to see that play in a competitive game. We've seen it before, I think, a couple times, but I think Froggen did it. Maybe that was in the solo queue game.
All right, so ESG now grouping up in the top lane. Hanao has joined them to set up a potential tower dive if they need it. Mimic does have the Glimpse of the Void buff to mitigate if ESG want to try and set this one up, but they're actually sending 4 members, so they really want to try and commit for this tier 2 turret up in the top lane.
Yeah, Den is there. And the tower took a fair beating last time they were there as well. So we're going to see if they can make this defense happen. They only have 3 people around the area, though. And they're keeping Gap in the mid lane, keeping Jizuki in the bottom lane, and also has his teleport. So I think they're good to go. EURONICS are going to try and crack open these towers in a different lane and rotate that onto this mid one. Going to clear out this minion wave. Maybe overkill, but well, he's going to go back to base anyway. So culling used from Gap onto minions.
So the thing ESG are going to struggle with is they're running a double AP comp. Yes, you could still argue that Phones acts as a frontline. He is that tank. He's decided to go for the Rod of Ages, so he's going to take a little while to ramp up, get those 10 stacks, be that beefy frontline. I wonder what his second item is going to be, because I've seen from a couple Swains a Spirit Visage to help set up for that healing. And given that the magic resistance will help you because it's up against a Morgana and an Elise, arguably, but they're not going to be the main damage threats. It is going to be that Trundle and that Lucian. So do want to keep my eyes on what he decides to go for. Moving forward. But the thing that concerns me for ESG is this ability to take these turrets. Ezreal doesn't typically build heavy AD. You have 2 AP casters, and now it has been changed so that if you have more AP than your AD, you will hurt the towers a little bit more, and as you stack more AP, you will then do more damage to turrets.
Yep.
And if you pick up things like Void Staff and Abyssal, your magic, you can now use penetration effects to affect the turrets as well. But still, their siege isn't great, is the point that I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. That is a good core point to have here at Vedius. And now, Phones is still in the top lane. He's always been in the top lane. I feel like you could have said that about Phones at any point in this game. He's just in the top lane. He's just still farming.
Yeah.
Mid lane, though, is now being sieged in by 4G. Gap is going to be trying to run away. Never Move doesn't quite connect. And Bard is going to take the journey on out. Phones now, he does have that TP, but he's with the rest of the team already. So, going to see Mimic in the top lane. He's still got his own TP, so he can teleport into the mid lane just in case things get hairy. But I think for now, we're going to see another disengage. 16, almost 17 minutes into the game. We haven't seen a kill go down yet, just being these objectives being traded back and forth.
Thing is, it is okay for Phones to just sit up in the top lane because likely that he has great connection with the rest of his team due to that teleport.
That's true. You would have thought that would be correct for 4G though, but yeah, exactly with Phones.
right now, Dragon going to be spawning up in 1 minute. ESG, with their superior teamfighting composition, could look to set up a plate around it. They've already got quite a lot of vision control around that area, as 4G is trying to clear that one out because they also know that that Dragon is going to be spawning relatively soon. So both teams wary of that neutral objective. If we can just have a cheeky look at the Dragon Pit, we can have an idea of which Dragon is going to come next, and then we can decide how much priority the teams are going to be putting on it. So I do believe that that is the Air Drake. I'm pretty sure that's the Air Drake, the Cloud Drake.
Maybe. I think it's Ocean. We're gonna find out in 37 seconds.
Ocean, Cloud. I guess we have stuff to look forward to as the game progresses.
Yes, we do. I can't wait.
Can't wait.
Gap and Taiki. Hype. Dragon Hype. Gap and Taiki are going to be heading on down. What we know at least is both of these teams are going to put the vision over that area and make sure that they can try and contest this one. First one, of course, went over to 4G. Going to rotate towards this mid lane. Probably take this tower down. Only Magic Felix is there, but there is just a single minion remaining, obvious, and the rest of the team are going to defend this one. So chipping away these towers ever so slightly before they can eventually knock them down. Jizuki taking so much damage from Magic Felix. You can see ticking every 2 seconds now. That's a lot of damage. You can see it chasing him down. Oh! Collateral damage will finish off the kill. I did not see that one coming, and I don't think Jizuki did either.
No, that was beautiful, and that is going to result in ESG being able to pick up the Ocean Drake, which is going to give them some really nice regeneration as the game progresses. This is the Victor that we were talking about. The changes to his ultimate mean that he does do a lot more damage. You play around that ultimate more, and based on his build, he is going more towards that Rylai's, so he is going to be building around that ultimate and basically saying, I want a team fight. I want to have an impact. I want to keep you in my ultimate for as long as possible, because for every tick, it chunks, and you saw it right there. It enabled Obvious to get that kill. So have a look at this. Jizuki, he didn't really think much of it. Oh, it's just a Victor.
It looks fine.
How many Victor ults have I had? Right, so there's another tick down to 10%, and then the collateral damage.
Almost max range as well.
That was beautiful. Really nice swipe coming out from Obvious. Clearly showing that he still has the mechanics. I don't know. Is that really mechanics?
I would say yes.
Yes?
Yeah, he lined up the shot. He took it. And Magic Felix as well, because Jizuki in that situation, I believe he still had flash.
Yeah,
and he was on 60% HP. He was just a spell shield, so he was like, "This is fine."
Do you know, like when you see that picture of the little dog sitting in the house on fire? He's just walking away, going, "This is fine."
Exactly. Yeah, until he died.
Until he died.
Yeah. So now, if you see a Victor in your ranked games, remember to just flash. Actually, just get away from the ultimate, because the cloud does so much damage now.
Just flash. That is the motto of today. So we've got. Don't face check.
Don't face check, yeah.
We've learned about the LeBlanc curse.
That's true.
We've learned that birds are pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we've also learned that you should flash if you see a Victor ult.
Yeah, not always. Just
like
get away
if a
from
Victor uses his ult to clear the wave, you're like, whoa, I gotta go!
I gotta leave. Alright, so got the engage coming in the mid lane, or some poking at least to try and take down the middle lane, that being from EURONICS. And now Jizuki coming in as the Tempered Fate catches Hadao, but maybe not the best member, because he of course has his ultimate. Mimic gonna get caught off to the side of this fight. Hadao, he's dropping low, but just have them break wall. Magic Felix is gonna be fronting up the front line. But Phones is also there just in case he's needed. But I think after all of that, we're just going to get a disengage in this mid lane. EURONICS and 4G not really looking for the fight just yet. Magic Felix approaching Taiki, going to have to flash over the wall. Magic Felix, I don't think he altered there, but there's a true shot barrage. Lands onto a couple members of 4G, but they are already pretty low.
So, Magic Felix actually used his ultimate as a disengage tool. As the rest of 4G were following up from the flank engage that was coming up from Mimic, Magic Felix just dropped it down onto the entering members, dropped it down onto Jizuki and Denden, who quite quickly learned their lesson. They realized that the Rylai's was also up, and they were like, nope, I ain't going anywhere near that. So they immediately disengage, which results in ESG being able to turn the fight around onto Mimic and forcing the flash out of Taiki. And now with the amount of damage that they were able to get down, they can easily set up to take that tier 1 turret in the middle lane.
Middle tower is deaded over to EURONICS, so that will be a nice gold injection over to them in this game. So they have a small gold advantage in this game, but nothing huge really, as we are 21 minutes in now. Obvious just taking up this buff, so is Magic Felix on the bottom side taking away the blue buff. And now the siege comes into the mid lane from Forge. Just trying to chunk down this tower. Collateral damage used to clear out the wave coming in from Obvious. So, yeah, that was a great disengage, because all the momentum was coming in from that minion wave from 4G, so they're going to have to stop doing anything.
See, what was actually really great about that play from ESG is they took a lot of the momentum away from 4G, because 4G, they had a pushing wave up in the top lane, they had a pushing wave in the bottom lane, and if they'd taken that mid turret, they may have been able to keep that momentum going. They might have been able to push onto that tier 2 turret because there was so much pressure coming out from the other side lanes. But because of the wave kick coming out from Obvious and Cedron, preventing that siege from happening from 4G, that now enables ESG to just reset and pick up all that free farm in the side lanes, and they can basically go, forget that ever happened, let's just go get a bit of extra farm, get a couple extra items, and then reset when it works for us.
Gap popping his ultimate. Ghostblade doesn't increase the damage on ultimate, but does give you extra movement speed, so it's easier to kind of maneuver your ultimate to hit people in the face with. But before it used to scale from attack speed, now it's a set number of shots every time you level that one up, but that was an old change anyway. It's just something to keep track of. Mid lane is getting wave cleared once again. Victor still very good at doing so, and 4G, again, they're trying these mid lane pushes, but constantly being wave cleared, constantly being outmaneuvered by ESG. This hasn't really resulted in a big advantage to either team, though.
So 4G, they're running a pick comp. By setting up these sieges, what they're trying to do is they're waiting for ESG to just slightly overstep, land the pick, get the immediate collapse, get the kill, numbers advantage, we can then take turrets. The problem is ESG are playing so defensively because they're aware of this possibility of getting picked off. They're relying on the Victor for the wave clear. They have the long-range poke coming out from Cedron, who now, having completed his Iceborne Gauntlet, is doing a great job of saying, I'm going to keep you guys over there. If you want to come here, you're going to get hit in the face, you're going to get slowed, and then Victor's going to poke you down. The pick does land on the Cedron, but because he has had out there to support him, he is not that afraid as well. So what 4G need to do is take advantage of this pick style of play, and they need to set up vision deep. They need to get this deep vision. They need to be relying on catching someone in a rotation, someone who's a little bit too overextended. They need to catch ESG off guard, and by grouping mid and just running at ESG, that is not going to happen.
Well, yeah, it's really just down to just like a stray skill shot land, perhaps.
Oh, they don't see it. Oh, they do. They got it.
Yeah. He was just trying to click it, but yeah, now Hadao, he's just walking around, taking away this Baron real quick. But yeah, Jizuki, when he does land a binding, we just saw it before on Cedron, does a lot of damage. So yeah, don't want to be hit by that one. You can see the power of the composition, they're just not able to execute on it right now.
Yeah, that was a lot of damage coming out from Jizuki.
Yes.
I do believe now he is level 13, so he will have maxed both his Dark Binding and his Tormented Soil, which means that Tormented Soil, just like Victor ult, can be a little bit unforgiving if you sit in all of it.
True.
Meanwhile, want to quickly rotate up to Phones, who has decided to go for the Zhonya second. Does make a lot of sense. Enables you to sit in the middle of team fights. The birds still fly out when you're in your Zhonyas, so if you're losing health, it's a great way to get some of that health back quickly, and it gives you some of that armor. So we were talking about earlier the Trundle and the Lucian being the mange damage dealers. Having that extra armor will help you out. And the cooldown reduction that you now get on the 6-9.
Very true, on the Zhonya's Hourglass. Well, Mountain Drake hype, and EURONICS will be trying to take this one down, and they're going to drag it out of the pit. So currently 4G do not have great positioning to try and stop this. Mimic's on the bottom side, but Obvious should be able to smite this one away. There we go. 25 gold and the Mountain Dragon in the bank. Here we go. Getting chunked out. He's going to have to pop the ultimate fairly early on. Remember, this is still only rank 1 Astra ultimate. Tempered Fate doesn't quite land onto Magi Felix. He's going to be backing off the rest of the team. Binding lands quick lens. Almost frame perfect. Fantastic. So he'll back away. Of course, the best move would have not been hit with that in the first place, but still managed to get out of it, and they take the dragon at no loss, really.
Like that execution from 4G, funneling ESG into what was effectively the entrance from the river, and that meant that it was so much easier to land their poke as Hadao goes in.
The flash, the pulverize, no ultimate, and no bueno. He's going to go down 1-0, and he just kind of walked into 4G, but that's what happens when Alistair misses his combo.
Adios, mi compadre. The Black Shield, fantastic counterplay against the engagement coming out from Alistair. He tried to land that play, didn't work out. Notice that he used both his flash and his exhaust. Didn't have the ultimate. Speaking of ultimates,
well, turns out Victor has burst. Did you know?
We're learning a lot today.
We really are. Den did not want to be there. He died in the portal, so he'll never be found. The body will never be found. Cedron again getting hit by a binding from Jizuki, being pinpoint accurate on those things. But bottom tower also went down while all that was happening, over to 4G.
It's alright, all 4G need to do is collect the Dragon Balls and they can bring Den back.
It's true. I think he's already back, though. I think he's good to go. He's kind of just sitting in base, though. So
that was a quick collection of the Dragon Balls.
It was, yeah. They did it very, very efficiently. But 1 kill to 2 in this game with 4G and ESG. Only 27 minutes into this game, so not been a very bloodthirsty game, but a lot of objectives being traded, a lot of attempts at plays being made. Of course, you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier, where 4G were pushing up the mid lane, they needed to set more vision down, and ESG playing so defensively, it's like, what are you going to do?
So the reason why we're not seeing any fights is because, just look at the comps. Where does the engage come from? We've seen a couple Tempered Fates come out, we've seen a couple Flash engagements come out from Hado, but both are pretty obvious in their engagement.
Sure.
And with the Black Shield, it's actually very difficult for Hado to set up that kind of a play, as we saw earlier on. So neither team can really just hit the go button, force a fight. They have to play around an objective, they have to land a pick, they need someone to overextend. Basically, you're relying on the other team to screw up. And these two teams, given their caliber, fighting for a spot in the Challenger Series, it's very unlikely that they're going to make such an obvious mistake as overextending.
It's a good thing to note out, though. I would like to see these teams go up against other teams utilizing a similar playstyle to have in this one, because 4G don't know a lot about them compared to the other teams in this tournament versus like EURONICS, who came out of the German tournament and looked just extremely strong and have players with pedigrees. So we just have to see how they perform against other teams, but I want to see how this match turns out, because 28 minutes into this game, a lot of items have been picked up. Jizuki, now with that death cap, he was going for a very kind of glass cannon build, doesn't want to be jumping in, and this also goes down to the playstyle, right? You want to be trying to catch someone, not just walk into the enemy and pop the Zhonyas like other Morgana builds we've seen before. That was an interesting sound out there. Because that's the sound I would make if I was hit by a true shot.
Yeah, that's me just like walking up to the top lane and being like, it's okay guys, we have enough wave clear, we can stop this siege. And then I get hit by a death ray as well as an Ezreal Q, and I'm just like, no, I'm leaving now.
Do not want.
So yeah, that's the noise. If you ever watch me play League, that's literally the noises that I make. Like
that would freak me out. If Jizuki made that noise and I was on TeamSpeak with him, that would just like freak me the hell out.
Just no one expecting me just sitting in laning phase making weird noises from my lane. What the hell's going on?
Mid lane okay? Yeah, it's fine. I just missed a minion. But ESG going to be still seeding up the top lane. Jizuki continuing to look for these Qs to land. The Spining's going to chase down Obvious. Doesn't connect. Taiki going to be warding on up, and because not a lot has been happening here, Phones does go into the bottom lane, but there's the TP out from Mimic, in fact, and the collapse should be good. Now reaction TP as they all regroup on the TP from Phones. Cedric's going to get locked up. Jizuki's getting blown up by Magifelix. Cedric will be the first one to go down in this fight. There's the exhaust coming out from Magifelix, though, and now Mimic and Taiki will be backing off. That was just a 1-0. Denden, that is extremely bold support. Magical Journeys right into the collateral damage. Obvious will be very happy to pick up that kill. So that ultimately turns into a 1-for-1.
So 2 for 2 for Obvious with his shots on that collateral damage.
Yeah.
Really impressive stuff, but as you rightly said, 1 for 1 overall in terms of the kills. ESG being a little bit more proactive with trying to set up a play. They realize that they can get the collapse with the beautiful ward that they have placed behind 4G, and that easily enables them to set up for that sort of flank engage. They get a very nice pick onto Cedric, and this is the power of that pick potential. So have a look at this. Teleport comes in. You're going to see the pillar follow up to try and prevent Obvious or burning his flash very early on. Cedric doesn't respect the pick potential, and he gets shut down super quickly. But Magifelix is really the guy that stops the follow-up engage from coming. He gets a really nice gravity field down, locking 2 members of 4G up and getting a huge amount of damage to force to disengage. And then Denden's like, hey guys, I'm here to heal you, I'm going to help you so we can re-engage. And then he's like, no, wait, no. And you can't obviously block the collateral damage. Yeah. Ends up giving away his life. So unfortunately for Denden, he's going to have to give up another wish of the Dragon Balls to bring him back to life. And he's currently sitting at 0, 2, and 2. So he has been involved in all of his team's kills, but he has also given away just as many.
Also true. If only he had a support, the support had a support. He had like a Braum, and it was just like, yeah, to protect him. Hadao's going to get caught out. He's not going to pop the ultimate, but that was a full culling charge onto him. So he's down to about 20% HP as he'll have to head on back. But that was just before the dragon spawning, and this is another Mountain Dragon. So this will most likely go over to 4G. This time, last Mountain Dragon went over to EURONICS. And this is just being uncontested while the rest of EURONICS go back to base, they go back to their jungle, and carry on farming as much as they can.
So, slower game compared to what we've had throughout the day. To be honest, not what I'm used to from Challenger Series. Usually we get a lot of fights, messy fights all over the map, but these two teams have been playing very macro-orientated, very much about these objectives, prioritizing farm onto certain players, and have a look at Phones right now as he tries to catch up Taki.
Oh, Taiki is over the wall. He's going to take a bit more damage from the Torment, but Jizuki mitigating a lot of that with the Black Shield. Phones is becoming more and more scary. He's now on triple items, which we haven't really revisited that in a while because we haven't seen Phones in a fight. But when he gets into one, he's going to be very scary.
Yeah, if only he had some kind of better connection to reach. I feel that with this itemization, he's going to be a very scary powerhouse, though. You have the Rylai's to help stick to your targets. You have the Zhonyas in case you get into a bit of trouble, and you also have that Roa for the sort of off-tankiness that Swain is. So, decided not to go for the Spirit's Visage for the extra bit of cooldown reduction as well as Magic Resist. I guess he decided that he would rather value the damage over that extra healing power. And given that he is quite tanky and has a lot of health anyway, it makes a lot of sense. So
yeah,
Phones moving forward may go for, I feel like the Void Staff would be the next best bet to shred through what Magic Resist is. You can see that the Locket is well on its way to being completed, as well as that the Spirit's Visage has been completed for Mimic. The Magic Resistance has been reduced on it, but still, it's something that you want to try and shred through as much as possible. So you can also see the Abyssal coming out from Taiki, so I do expect the Void Staff to be next.
That was brave by Sedrin. He jumps forward into Taiki and another 4 members by himself, but actually gets out alive and actually gets a lot of poke down onto Taiki. Takes him down to about 50%. Meanwhile, Phones was also caught out by Binding, so also goes down to around 50% himself. As a good pick onto Hadao once again. He may need to pop the ultimate here. He pops it instantly, comes in with a flash. The knockup moves on to Den. Obvious is looking to put down some damage. Mimic is zoning away Sedrin and Magi Felix. Big ultimate from Magi Felix onto 4 players. And the storm is still surging onto Taiki. He'll manage to get away through the wall, courtesy of Bod. Sedrin, he is just a binding magnet this game, taking all of those to the face. He's going to be dropping low himself. But that was ultimately a 1-0. A kill over to 4G onto Hadao.
So you can really see how hard it is for ESG to stick onto the targets of 4G. They have so much disengage and pick available that they are constantly keeping ESG at arm's length and denying Phones from actually getting into the middle of these team fights and being a nuisance that Swain really is. So really impressive stuff coming out from 4G, landing binding after binding, coming out from both Den and Jizuki, as well as the Pillar and the Cocoon. It's just so obnoxious to get through. So have a look at this. Sedrin already forced to use his gap closer to disengage. Gap just dancing around, doing what he can, and there's the first pick. You can see the Pillar coming out. There's the next pick coming out from Den as the Baron is actually going to get started off. So cut short that replay, but 4G, they get a kill. TP comes in from ESG.
This could get messy. True shot barrage onto Den and Taiki. Obvious is taking a lot of the brunt of this damage. Hadao is going to body block that for his jungler.
No ult.
Mimic, Taiki coming in here. The Baron is still angry. He's still spitting at people, and now he's starting to regen. So Den is always on the receiving end of pretty much any damage that comes out from anything in this game. ESG, Phones once again gets caught out by this binding, and Jizuki has been making this work. Taiki's going to try and jump away. He's going to repel onto the minion, and Sedrin jumps forwards. Phones will pick up the kill. Obvious comes in with a cloud of damage for the overkill, and the jungler goes down. And EURONICS, can they make anything happen from this?
Taiki, that was a mistake. I feel like that's the only way to describe what happened there. He walked literally into all 5 members of the team.
He did the God Bro.
Yeah, he did the God Bro. And based on what we've learned today, that's how you throw games.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, ESG, they're just going to go back, control some of the side waves that are pushing against them. So, they're not going to gain that much off the back of it. But Taiki, I'm not a fan of his build. I feel like he should have gone a little bit more off-tank. I feel like he should have he could pick up something like the Frozen... Well, I don't think he needs the Frozen Light. He just needs to prioritize magic resistance. Banshee's Veil would work quite nicely on him. The magic resistance on that hasn't changed. Only one of the major magic items that hasn't had it adjusted. As well as that, Abyssal I feel like should have been a little bit more of a priority, especially if you want to go for that damage route. Sure. Rylai's, I feel like, yes, okay, it helps a little bit with the kiting, but you've already got enough kite. Do you need the Rylai's on top of that as well? So, not a massive fan of Taiki's build path. But another binding lands onto Obvious.
There's a lot of damage. Tempered Fate will draw ESG back into the team. Hadao, he's going to be popping his own ultimate. True Shot Barrage comes across. Magi Felix going to be pulling out the laser, but again, he's bound up. Taiki, he's going to be coming in here. Mimic, once again, he's also going to get bound up, this time by Phones. Hits him with the Never move. And Magi Felix, he's going to have to back off back to base. Phones is back on this front line. A lot of people flashing up red, but no one went down.
So now you're seeing the ESG being the ones to force to disengage, because 4G starting to group up and do exactly what they did in the early game, but this time it's working out beautifully for them. They're landing their bindings, they're landing these picks, and it's enabling them to get a lot of damage down and force a lot of summoner spells out of the side of ESG. Flash gone. Taiki!
Well, what goes up must come down, and Taiki is very down.
Yeah, I think he got washed out of the water spout right there.
I really think so too. Was he just I think he was just recalling.
Yeah, in the middle of the lane. Yeah.
Don't do that, kids.
Yeah, please don't. Taiki, that was a big misplay. And we talked about you get caught out once, you can give away a big objective. Mimic, he might now be the one getting caught out.
He's good. He's significantly more tanky than Elise. But unfortunately, Baron is on the board, but with 4 members remaining, despite them having no jungler, I think they should be okay. Got very weirded out for a second because all of EURONICS just jumped through a portal. And I was like, they don't have a bard. But Den had just like set it up for them, convening to the next objective, which is Dragon. So EURONICS are going to go down here, and this is the Elder Dragon now spawning at 37 minutes. Everything after 35 minutes will be Elder Dragons. So going to be buffing up their current dragons, but they just kind of left open Baron. So I'm not sure how fast they can take this one down. MagiPhoenix is the only one heading over, but if there is any one member to send over, it is definitely the mid lane. A True Shot Rose comes in, does not net the steal. That was a curious play from EURONICS. They knew that 4G were there because they were contesting the Baron.
Yep.
Then they went Dragon to contest that instead. Yep. Maybe they really prioritized the Dragon. Like, that was just interesting.
I guess they value it more. It's going to give them a lot of tower shoving potential. They're going to quickly take up that tier 2, but now 4G, we talked about it in the last game, Baron has been extended in its duration, now lasting 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Elder Dragon only lasts 2 minutes, and you need to force a fight, and so far this game, it has not been about fighting. The kill score is only 3 to 5 in 38 minutes. Coming up to 39, we only had 8 kills total. Yeah. So I don't know if ESG are going to be able to really make maximum use out of this, and yes, they have a lot of wave clear with the Victor, but with the amount of pick potential combined with a Baron, that sets up for quite a scary siege position.
Well, I guess we're going to find out the answer to which was better, Elder Dragon with 2 dragons or the Baron. It definitely gave 4G the momentum to push up mid lane. The poke doesn't land. That's a good Q out from Jizuki. Onto again Hadao. He's going to go down to around 30% HP and pop his ultimate, so that's pretty significant for around the next minute. Still has his flash, but if he goes in, it's probably a one-way ticket.
It certainly is. ESG doing what they can to just defend against this turret. 4G going to move around to the blue buff.
Yeah, that blue buff pretty dead. Big crit coming out to pick that one up, going over to Gap. But what did they buff? It was Mountain and Ocean, right? Out from ESG, yeah. So
the stats all get doubled, I believe, once you have the Elder Drake.
Yeah, plus 50%, I believe, on
each
plus
buff. 50, of course, yes, plus 50%. Yeah. So now that Ocean Drake will give you 6% regeneration, which, to be honest, against a pick comp, it's not actually that useful. Against poke comp, it can be quite valuable.
But if you get caught, you're dead anyway.
Yeah, if you get caught, you're dead. The Elder Dragon should be wearing off relatively soon. And there it goes. Poof. It's disappeared. As we've seen from Taiki come quite a lot this game. As 4G now with the Baron still alive, they still have about a minute left on it. They're going to look to take this tier 2 turret in the mid.
Yeah, I think this one's probably going to go down, but that is a pretty stellar effort at defending this tower. Meanwhile, in the bot lane, Trundle was just locked in a battle to the death with Phones. Mid tower goes down over to 4G. Hadal's dropping very low himself, just getting his ultimate back online now. Still has his flash, still has exhaust.
Ooh, that was close though.
It was very close. A little too close for comfort. I think MagiPhoenix. Ooh, Jizuki. I mean, look at the Thunderlord's proc coming out there. They were just dueling in the mid lane. Both of their combos landed, but MagiPhoenix did not use his own ultimate, so that'll be important for the next fight. Top tower now being sieged in. Jizuki roaming in from the bottom side, looking for a stray binding onto Cedrian, but he will just carry on farming his minions. Top tower push has been averted, but the top tower is down to like 5% HP, so 4G just needs to go up there, hit it once, and it will be going down very shortly.
So let's take this as an opportunity to quickly recap what has happened now with this Baron and with this Elder Dragon. ESG, they decided to prioritize the Elder Drake. They wanted that extra damage. They wanted to say, look, we can fight you because we know we have power. 4G made the smart decision and said, well, we don't want to fight you. We're going to take a Baron and we're going to just wait it out instead. So they wait the 2 minutes. They allow the buff to disappear. And then with the Baron, with the fantastic pick potential that they have, they set up the siege. They take the tier 2 turret down the mid. They get a lot of damage down on the tier 2 turret in the top. So now things have returned to normality a little bit. ESG hold the gold lead, but 4G's win condition is still the same. They want to group up. They want to land this crowd control around an objective, and they just want to force ESG back. While ESG, they want to force a fight. So they need Hado to come in from the flank. They need to set up these plays, and the most important thing is they need to control vision, which right now they are really struggling with.
That's actually a really good point. We haven't seen Hado go for any flank engages. In fact, any real flanks from EURONICS in general. So they haven't managed to get the fights that they really wanted. A lot of their plays and their kills have come from like reaction plays or snipes out from obvious, honestly, in the mid lane. So if they could get into that fight, that's definitely what they're trying to get into. Jizuki now finished up his Zhonya's Hourglass on top of all the AP items he had. So Hado, even if he gets on top of him, they're not going to be able to burst down the Morgana before she gets into Zhonya's.
No,
so it's getting progressively harder for them to go for a fight, even on top of 4G. There goes the top lane turret for 4G, as they set up a little bit earlier. So there is no inner turrets left available for 4G to take. So everything else is just trying to crack that inhibitor line and get into the base from EURONICS now.
And the gold has completely equalized, more or less. 200 difference now between the two teams. 4G have done a great job of, even though it looks like they were falling behind in the fights earlier on, they get that Baron, and it seems to be the Baron so far of these games.
It does,
Last game before, we saw that one pick turn into a Baron. That one pick from ESG could have turned into the Baron if they wanted it, but hang on a second, Gap.
Ooh, big culling, big collateral damage. Ultimately going to drop both the AD carries a little bit low, but they've got the regeneration, of course, going on to Ezreal, so he's going to be pretty healthy. He's pretty much back up to full already, so he's good to go. And let's take a look at some of the items coming out here. So there's the Death Cap, of course, we already mentioned. Looking at the ADC and how maybe he'll go for a more Cattery build and went for the Black Cleaver once again. We're seeing on Lucian. Also picked up the Infinity Edge now, 1-0 and 1. 450 farm. We haven't even noticed being farming for Storm for this entire game. Like
well, he's
Flame Horizon Cedrian at this point.
Oh, he has. Wow. Didn't even notice that. Went completely unawares. But Gap, yeah, this is the caster AD carry build that we've been seeing a little bit more. It gives you a lot of penetration. Really effective culling if you get the full channel of it off with the amount of penetration that it does provide. And basically, because you get a lot of cooldown reduction from this build as well, your abilities are up pretty regularly. You have a lot of mobility with your dashes and all that cool stuff. So I do like this itemization. He's decided to go for the Infinity Edge just to have that extra bit of oomph that we do love to see from these carries. And Morgana, interestingly, so a couple of Morganas I've seen in the past like to go for that Rod of Ages, decided to go more towards heavy damage, went for a very early Death Cap, then into the Zhonya's, then into a Void Staff. And to me, this is like the Season 2, Season 3 builds of old, where we used to see Morgana cast it in. But right now, if she lands that binding, it is going to hurt, as we've seen many times from Cedrion, as he has been our fantastic guinea pig as to what the potential from Morgana
He really has. He's been like the power test for 4G every time there's just like, oh, I bought a new item. Let's just test it out on Cedrion. But yeah, he just lined himself up for it. Baron's up in 20 seconds, clearing out this vision as well as EURONICS can do. Also really like your word usage of oomph. I don't think there's many other casters who use that. I know there's going to be a lot of European viewers who have absolutely no idea what that means. It does remind me of like MasterChef as well. It's just like, it's more oomph. This build is like a good recipe.
It's like
you need more oomph.
You need more vroom in your car. You know, you need more vroom. You know, it's the same principle. You need more oomph in your punch.
That's true.
That's it's you know, it's that bit extra. That's what you mean by oomph.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so
a little bit more.
Yeah. So Syndra last game didn't quite have the oomph having gone for the Zhonya's, but now with the Death Cap, the magical wizard's hat that makes everybody look awesome, is really going to hurt with that Morgana. So
definitely is the oomph that you need.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But have a look at Mimic right now. Still split pushing, has a lot of damage. Iceborne Golem and Raveners.
That was just gone. Phones has found him, but if he gets into a battle with Mimic, he's just going to run after him forever. Top tower will be exchanged, but as that base opens up now by 4G, who take that bottom lane turret, Hado is going to be tanking a bit more damage, but honestly, EURONICS were on the receiving end of that poor play.
Okay, so we've been talking about the engages for a really long time, but now I just had a look at what Denon has decided to build. We got a Righteous Glory, ladies and gentlemen. Big changes to Righteous Glory on the most recent patch, because with the changes to Catalyst of the Irons, you now have that added on as well, and it now previously it didn't speed up your teammates, now it does again. So that is the engage opportunity that 4G needed, and I really like it. I would have liked to see it come out from Hado, because it really would have enabled them a little bit more in these team fights. But the fact that 4G have gone for it and they said, right, we've had enough now, we've got enough items, GA has now been completed for Mimic. Magic resistance on it has been nerfed a little bit on 6-9. But other than that, 4G are pretty much good to go. They've got all the items that they need. Frozen Heart as well as the Abyssal now all completed for Taiki, so he's going to be a little bit tanky. And I feel like this game will come down to just one big team fight that will decide everything.
I mean, sometimes you get those games, right? I mean, everyone's starting to cap out on items. Pretty much everyone in this game, even supports to a certain extent, picking up those consumables, of course, and that's basically it for the support build. So I really feel it will hit that point where it's just like, we're now 47 minutes into this game. The teams are just going to go at it. Someone's going to come out ahead, and it will be the end. I mean, ESG, if they can get a 5-on-5 fight, that's what they've been looking for the entire game. Victor lands an ult on 4 or 5 people, they're all just going to disintegrate.
I feel like we're going to get to... I feel like both teams said at the start, like, how about we just farm until late game? And then both teams said, agreed.
Cedrian?
That's where we're at this point.
Oh, Cedrian. He jumps over the wall. He survives somehow. Hadow comes in for an engage. Phones over the wall. Never Move does not connect. Magic Felix, there's the ultimate. Respect the ultimate. There's the flash.
It is.
And Taiki and Suzuki will limp away with their lives, flashing up red, but still alive, of course. But Mimic is in the bot lane. Of course, there's a Trundle just pushing away down here. So ESG, they need to make a decision. Do they commit on Baron and then try and take this one down? Or do they send someone back, or they try and do both?
Well,
and currently they're just going for the Baron. Good stall out by Denden. He puts down the Tempered Fate. Mimic now coming in. That's the smite going over to Obvious, so Baron is secured by EURONICS. Now, Gap and Mimic aren't quite there in time, but Mimic did secure the bottom lane inhibitor, so again, it was a trade. Was it worth? 4G are going to get the Elder Drake as well, so was it worth?
So, this is the ultimate question, because Mimic, he's now at a point where I don't even know if phones can trade against him, because this Trundle, he does get a little bit ridiculous in the late game once he's full build. Ooh, snipe, is it? No, nowhere even
Not
close.
even close. 6,000 HP remaining.
So, okay, so Mimic, yes, he gets that bottom inhibitor, which is fantastic for 4G. It means that there's going to be that constant pressure that someone has to respond to, and you have to be honest, like, with an AP top like Swain, he's going to struggle a little bit to get through those empowered super minions, which might mean that his wave code is a little bit weaker, but you have that constant supply, which could stall out this Baron. But that doesn't mean you're not going to do anything with the Elder Drake, because it does only last those 2 minutes. You have to try and force something in. The real question for 4G is, do they want to force something against a Baron-empowered ESG? Because it is risky. You are walking into a lot of empowered minions, and you do get those bonus stats from the Baron buff as well. So it's... I feel like we're just going to continue. I feel like this game could very well go on for an hour because both teams are struggling to engage. The Righteous Glory wasn't even used by Denden in the last fight. Once the Baron was dropped, he was too afraid to force the fight. And so both teams just returning to farm mode. And at what point does farming become not an option?
When they all cap out. But
they are capped out. Look at them.
When they start selling like random items to pick up like better items, or when the junglers start swapping out like the jungle item for like something else. But
right, once they've started buying pots, surely that's the point at which you realize you've got enough gold.
You'd think so, Vedius. But we're now just cresting 50 minutes into this game, only 10 minutes away from the 1 hour mark you were just talking about. So I think there's a very real possibility we hit that. EURONICS are trying to defend their top lane inhibitor tower, but do remember that their bottom lane inhibitor has already gone down, so the super minions pushing down there, someone's going to have to defend that. And because they have no true AD carry, it's going to be a little difficult to clear away the super minions. Magi Felix is going to be the one who's going down there to clear this one away. There's the culling. Gap, he's not going to feel too badly about it not doing too much damage because he's got so much cooldown reduction, it's going to be up in like 20 seconds. Yeah. Not quite 20 seconds, but very shortly.
Yeah, it certainly is. This is the caster AD carry that you and I were talking about in the early game that has been rising in power. Would be cool to see it on a couple other AD carries. We did see it on the Misfortune earlier on. But the siege continues from 4G. They have the dragon that I do believe has just worn off. Ooh, Gap.
Phones has been called out by the binding. Gap takes a bit of damage in return. Obvious has maybe stepped a little too far forward. Great Pillar comes in from the Trundle to stop Obvious there. Now, Hadow will block up a bit of damage himself. Now he'll be backing away. Sedchin, don't take the binding. Good. And now he'll stay alive. So no one went down from EURONICS. Frones is back in from base. He's going to come in very fast. That's a very fast bird. Here comes a true shot barrage. And Obvious going on forwards. Jizuki and Magi Felix. Let's go back to mid lane. Let's go back to the laning phase. Let's go have this one-on-one. Phones. He's found him. There comes the Bird. Bird is sat down, nothing to kill. Now the bottom lane still pushing, and this is something that ESG have to continue to try and defend against.
So, Phones flew in like a falcon, trying to set up a play, used his Baron-empowered recall to, after taking a lot of damage, going back to base and then quickly rejoining and being like, yo guys, I'm back. But didn't work out. The thing that I've just realized from 4G is they have no grievous wounds. There is no Morellonomicon, there is no Mortal Reminder, which means that Phones is free to regenerate as much as he wants. I don't know if I'm a fan of that. I feel like Jizuke at this point could swap out Frostqueen's claim for a Morellonomicon. He probably has the money, and it would really help against Phones. If he'd had that health regeneration cut in half, then it really would have helped to get that kill. And then with the numbers advantage, they might have been able to finally break a little bit more into the base of ESG, but that did not happen. The stall continues. Baron is gone, Dragon is gone, Inhibitor likely to respawn within the next 1 minute. And yeah, so slow game.
For sure. 52 minutes in now, and as you mentioned, Phones was very tanky in that last fight. Very, very tanky. Got hit by a binding. Generally, that should spell doom late game when a Morgana lands a binding on you, but he just kind of shook it off and walked away and went back to base, so he was good to go. And looking towards 90,000 gold for both teams very, very shortly. Starting to cap out on items. We said that like 10 minutes ago, but now they're really starting to cap out on items because there is so many of them.
There are the pots. There they are.
The pots. Now everyone's just huge. Looking at the trinkets as well. 2 blue trinkets coming out from ESG. And you can see I think that's a Mortal Reminder coming out from Gap. Yeah. So they have heard your prayers and they've picked up an item which will help them slice through the Swain just a little bit easier.
So now, Gap, the question is, does he really want to be the one in range of the Swain?
Not really.
So
I'll hit him with my culling.
Yeah, so yes, he has the Mortal Reminder. If Swain does happen to get on his face, he will be able to cut that damage or that health regeneration in half, thanks to the Grievous Wounds.
Yeah. Because at least it's some physical damage, so we can actually just call him from like super long range away. It's like, all right, now the rest of you go get him, because I don't want to get in range of the Swain at this point in the game.
Hans decided to conclude his build off with the Spirit's Visage, so his healing is going to be improved, so if any time to get it, this is the best time to get it. But Cedron goes in, he gets hit again!
This time though, he does have the Mercurial Scimitar. That's going to be flashed away from by Cedron, and now he has no way to get away from the Trundle. The rest of the team is there to save him. That's a lot of regen coming out. Phones is basically the one-man army. Goes into Zhonya's Manu Felix looking to back him up. Got a lot of his health back in from the flock of crows. Now, Jizuki off to the side. He's basically by himself. Will have to flash away from the Never move, and Phones will back off.
Now, without that flash from Jizuki, he can't go for that multi-man ultimate. His Gap gets slowed.
Oh, Hadao comes in for the engage, and actually Taiki will be the one to receive the pulverize. Gap is going to come in with the culling, try and get the Grievous Wounds down onto the Swain, but the push will continue by EURONICS. Now they back off.
Wow, so no kills going down. We're still at 3-5. ESG not quite able to take advantage of anything. Mimic coming in from the flank. 4G landing the binding down onto Cedron, forcing literally everything out from him, which is great. Now moving on to the future, if 4G land another binding onto Cedron, who does seem to be a little bit of a magnet, then they could get the numbers advantage that they need, but Cedron, he's playing hyper-aggressive.
Oh, Cedron again, another binding, and he's just dead. Mimic is going to be the one to take him down with a nice chomp to finish him off. Den comes in, Magic Face will flash away from the binding. Never move comes out, doesn't manage to hit anyone, but does zone him away. Phones onto Taiki, or maybe it's Taiki onto Phones. Another binding, another follow-up, another cocoon, but Phones, he's just eating all of the damage. The Swain just won't die. 1-0 over to 4G. Now they'll turn their sights onto Baron.
So this will be the third Baron of the game coming out between 4G and EURONICS. And just as we talk about Cedrion eating a binding, he does just that. Jizuki with phenomenal aim, able to realize that Cedron has nothing. He's used the flash, he's used the heal, his Mercurial Scimitar still on cooldown. He's just used that dash to close the gap onto Mimic, and he eats it, setting up perfectly for 4G to get exactly what they want. He has the slow, just beautiful execution coming out from 4G. There's absolutely nothing that ESG can do at this point. They've lost so much damage, and it's just phenomenal stuff. Look at this again, though. We talk about Cedric needing a lot of bindings, but I do want to give some credit to Jizuke as well, because his bindings have been really well placed. Notice that at the end of that team fight, he forced the flash out of Magi as well because he was going to land another one. He then gets the third one down onto Phones as well. This guy is doing a great job of landing these bindings, and we were wondering how the Morgana would work out.
Yeah.
It is doing a pretty great job in Jizuke's hands.
Yeah, we were maybe a little bit skeptical about the pick. You know, picking Morgana now with like all the other majors being changed. It's like, okay, and then Victor being picked up, and we saw how good MagiFelix was in the early game. Like, he was destroying people with that ultimate, but Jizuke, as this game has gone on, he was really like the linchpin as well of this composition, landing those bindings, landing cocoons as well, and following up with them. I like this from EURONICS, looking for a flank engage, but it's just a little bit too late, and Mimic might find them with a pillar, and he's so tanky, and he has the Guardian Angel that he could just run into them, die, and as long as his team can catch up, they'll be in a good position for a fight.
He certainly can be. Right now, notice that ESG feel like they're playing on the back foot, given that Cedron has eaten so many bindings so far. He's playing a little bit safer, like he should have been throughout the game, as, Taiki.
Maybe true.
Going to be forced to repel. Oh, the ultimate down from Magi. This is actually massive for 4G right now. They know that they have the ability advantage. That's a big damaging setup from Magi that they no longer have. So 4G, this could be the opportunity that they want. They could use this as that gateway into taking down that inhibitor once again.
I mean, it's an 80-second cooldown now on the Chaos Storm for MagiFelix, so this is a big window that 4G can utilize to try and take this one down. We're only around 2 minutes away from 60 minutes to Dream, so I'm excited for that one here, Vedius. Maybe it's now time to start taking bets on how long this game will go. But now that 4G are pushing into the base, you have to feel it won't be too much longer. Phones, again, he's tanking up another binding from Jizuke, but he's regenerating a lot from these minions as well. He's down to around 60%, but doesn't mean too much when you're Swain. Obvious and Hadal. Hadal this time looking for a flank, but he literally walked past the pink ward, so good luck with that.
All right, so I'm going to make the call. At the 60-minute mark, Jizuke's going to land a binding. He's going to find a fight, and one team is then going to end the game off the back of that fight.
Okay, we'll see if it pans out, and I will call you out if you are wrong. So Gap and Jizuke, they are the major damage dealers of this team. They're trying to play around Mimic, who is trying to be as far forwards as possible. There's the culling coming in as well. Binding onto Hadal. He may have to pop his ultimate, but good zoning from Cedric and MagiFelix using their respective abilities to push away some of the threats. Taiki, he's pretty low on mana. He's been sending a lot of cocoons out, a lot of volatile spiralings, so needs to be a little careful of that if he continues to siege.
He was using the Rune Glaive right there to actually get some mana back on the Grom, so quite nice interaction coming out from him. Notice now they're moving towards the Drake. This is it. This is very likely to be the big team fight that I was talking about. 59 minutes on the clock. Can 4G pick this one up?
Hadal's chunked. Mimic is there with Jizuke. I think the Elder Dragon's going to go down regardless, and yeah, ESG kind of wander in, but they got to be careful. Cedric, he's a little too far forward once again. Hadal, he's going to try and save him. Lots of CC onto Mimic, but Jizuke, he's down. MagiFelix lands the ultimate onto a Mimic, goes into his Guardian Angel, phones over the wall, tempered fate. He may have just saved the fate of Mimic as he's backing away. Collateral damage, won't find a snipe this time. And that was a 1-0, but the Dragon went over to 4G.
But have a look at the minion wave up in the top lane. This is absolutely massive for ESG. 55 seconds on top of Jizuke right now, and even though 4G have the Dragon, are they going to be able to stop the siege coming out from ESG?
Well, we'll see if they can make it happen. Big minion wave in the top lane and the middle lane. That's like 5 minion waves all stacked over the top lane. There's 4 cannon minions. I don't think I've ever seen 4 cannon minions in one place. Crazy push in the top lane. Someone's going to have to deal with that as the middle inhibitor goes down. ESG, we've just crested 60 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Are we going to find that team fight that Vedius was talking about? We'll see if it happens. Obvious is pushing in. And if we get that team fight, most likely EURONICS are going to pick up this game. Taiki, he gets the engage up. Gap coming in. MagiFelix off to the side. Phones looking to land some CC. He's a big scary bird, but he's taken so much damage from a fully charged culling. He goes into Azonia's Gap. He's gonna have to cleanse out of it. Phones, another binding lands. He's gonna have to flash away. Obvious on the receiving end of the cocoon. Taiki, he's backing off, and no one dies. The game continues.
Oh, the game carries on. ESG and 4G just can't find any kills. It is just so difficult for them. Let's have a quick recap of this team fight. Jizuke Jizuke goes a little bit too aggressive with the flashing age. I feel like that's pretty much the first one of the game we've seen from him, and it ends up backfiring in his face because he is the only one to actually go for the engagement. I felt like 4G wanted to just go for a hit and run, get the dragon and get out, but that is not what Jizuke had in mind. He ends up paying for it with his life. 4G with the dragon are able to fend off the siege. They give up an inhibitor, but the game goes on.
100,000 gold over to both teams. They have like all of the gold. Let's take a look actually at the gold. Yep, everyone's pretty much floating on full items. We've got 2,600 over to Gap, another 2,000 at top lane for Mimic. They're just sitting on. They can't use because they're just capped out on items. So if they want pots, you can have pots. If you want anything, the world is your oyster. Oh, hello. He's getting caught by the binding, but he has a Guardian Angel at this point as well. And the rest of his team is, he's there. The rest of the team's good to go. Magic Phoenix is going to jump in. Gap's taking a lot of damage. Oh, respect the ultimate. Mimic, he's going to go down. There's no Guardian Angel. This could be an opening point for ESG to push into the base.
Wow, ESG, you said it, respect the ultimate. They did not do that, and ESG finally get themselves another pick, but we saw this before. They had the numbers advantage. They were able to take out Jizuke, who was one of the main wave clearers, and they still could not do it. So can they do it against 4G? Are they going to end up overextending and giving away the game to 4G, or will they finally be able to close things out? Or are they just going to run away?
I just don't know. Honestly, at this point in the game, when you're past an hour into the game, one team fight will just determine it. Like, if you decisively win a team fight, even if 3 people die, that's just, the game is over for either team who wins that one. So far, it's been such a nail-biter because only one person has died from, like, each team. Phones, he's being caught out. There's the fully charged calling onto him. Wait, did he have no Zhonya's?
He had Zhonya's! He did not respect it!
He just didn't use it! Respect the calling! Respect the damage! Baron is dropping very low. It's going to be a smite fight. 3,000 health remaining. Obvious. He's getting chunked down himself. It's stolen by Taiki. And now 4G against all odds. This might be enough for them to close in for the win. Magic Phoenix and Sejin are still alive. Denzen doesn't land the Cosmic Binding. The follow from Taiki. He's looking for a cocoon. It's on to Hadao. Not quite the right target. He's still very tanky. But Jizuki and Mimic, the tag team, they're coming in. This is the Nexus turret's going down. And they just can't respond in time. They're getting collapsed on 5 versus 3. And I don't think there's anything that EURONICS can do. Mimic and Jizuki are waiting for the cavalry to arrive, and Sejin and Hadao are doing all that they can, but they just lost the mid laner. And 4G, they're onto the Nexus, and somehow they upset ESG, and it's 1 hour epic.
GG 4G taking down ESG in a 63-minute slugfest. Woo! What a game! They were basically like, "Hey, Venius, we heard you're new to the LCS. Here, have a 60-minute European game."
Oh,
I was
my
like,
God.
"Great, thanks for that." So, where do we start with that game?
I mean, it was a lot to break down, but let's just talk about that final fight because all of that, ESG was so far ahead, pretty much like they had the tempo in that game, and it was just like, well, basically just in the base, waiting for them to finally engage. 4G find 2 picks, and they try to go for the Baron, that being from ESG, and the game just ends.
Yeah, hopefully we can actually get a replay of that final fight, because the culling at the very end there, we talked all game.
The Swain.
Yeah, we talked all game about respect the ultimate, and we weren't just talking about Victor. The culling with the Black Cleaver and the Ghost Blade has so much penetration, it will just shred, and when you're sitting on top of that tormented soil as well, that is a lot of damage. The fact that you didn't Zhonya's, really greedy, massive misplay. 1 pick gives a Baron. That seems to be the theme of this afternoon's games.
Honestly, I think we could talk for another hour about that game, but I think both of the next 2 teams want to start to get into their game very shortly, so we're going to take a quick break. That's 5 games down, and that was a crazy game. We have just 1 more to go, so stick with us. We'll be back after this short break.
Woo!